You're listening to the Bluejay Breakdown.
Welcome into Bluejay Breakdown. Anna Bellinghausen and Jacob Padilla alongside with you. We're breaking down men's basketball and women's basketball. Jacob, let's start on the men's side first. What was your initial reaction to that exhibition against Purdue?
Well, first off the bat, over 15,000 fans for an exhibition game, raised $150,000 for the United Way of the Midlands Disaster Relief Fund. So from that standpoint, mission accomplished there. That's what they were hoping. That's what they wanted to do this for. And you got a chance to test yourself against another great team. You don't often see a lot of exhibitions between two top 15 teams, and that's what the fans got. And they certainly got their money's worth.
Didn't
for
look
that
like
one.
an exhibition.
No, you had 180 points scored between the two teams. So yeah, that was a fun one. I think basically what I saw from it is a lot of kind of confirmation of the new guys fitting and what this could look like. And then also there's still some question marks sitting out there that they have to answer based on what we've heard about the Iowa State scrimmage and then what we saw against Purdue on Saturday.
What would you say those biggest question marks are?
Perimeter defense. That's the biggest question right now. They gave up 35 points to Keyshawn Gilbert for Iowa State, who's 6'4" guard, their best scorer last year. And then Braden Smith put up 31 in this one, and Fletcher Lawyer 17 as well. And you look at it, Stephen Ashworth and Pop Isaacs, they were phenomenal on offense. Smaller backcourt, though. And then once you get into the bench, you're mixing in some guys that are primarily played the 4 at the 3 and having to chase guys on the perimeter. So there's some questions about, all right, who's going to go out there? And if the other team's got a perimeter guy that's on a roll, who's going to be able to slow him down? Jemiah Neal might be able to help there just with his athleticism. 6'5", got more length than their other guards, but they haven't had the answer to that so far. That being said, it's a scrimmage and an exhibition. Ryan Kalkbrenner hasn't played the same amount of minutes that he would have. They don't have the in-depth scouting reports that we'd see in the regular season. So not something to panic about, but it is something that they're going to have to answer as we get into the real games.
Yeah. The one question I asked Coach McDermott at the end of our interview was, what does this team need to do to be successful when it comes to March? And he said they need to be a top 25 defense in the entire, college basketball landscape. Do you think that's possible?
I mean, that's what KenPom's projecting heading into the season. I think right on the dot at 25 because Ryan Kalkbrenner and their recent history and what they've been since he's moved into the starting lineup. And anytime you got a guy like that hanging back there, makes things so much easier for everybody else. So yeah, I think Kalkbrenner by himself kind of gives you a certain floor defensively, especially with the way that Creighton system works to maximize his strengths. But there are, like I said, there are some questions about positional fits and how guys kind of fit together out there. Who is going to be able to go out? You still got to go out and guard on the perimeter. You're not going to be able to. You got to.
You can't just let Ryan handle all of it.
Yeah. Not everybody's going to go to the rim. You got to be able to take away, to force some, and that's where Trey Alexander, his length is losing out on that. It's going to hurt. Whereas because Isaacs is much closer to Stephen Ashworth physically than he is to than Trey Alexander with the 6'8" wingspan, ability to get around and maybe contest from the rear or from the side within that drop covered scheme. So there's some questions there, but yeah, anytime you got a guy like Kalkbrenner, you've got a chance to be one of the better defenses in the country.
What did you think of the job Fred King did? He did have 4 fouls, so that was obviously an issue, but what did you think he accomplished to be a backup for Kalk?
Yeah, and I think he was assertive. He went out there and he produced. Yeah, he did foul a lot, which has been a problem for him throughout his career. And that's something as he moves forward past this season, whatever his role may be. You're not going to have a guy playing 37 minutes ahead of you. So, but I think offensively he looked better. He 8 points in his limited minutes there. Yeah, went up there, was assertive. There are times where he's kind of been slow off the ground, missed out on some opportunities to score that Creighton really needed to convert while he was out there. And so as long as he kind of, if he gives you neutral minutes there, he scores as much as he gives up, then you'll be able to be just fine because of how much of a positive Kalkbrenner's in. So it was, I think, a good first showing for him. But yeah, it's gotta cut back on the fouling just a little bit.
Which is the complete opposite of Ryan Kalkbrenner, who's never fouled out in a game in his entire career, which is just beyond me how that's been possible. But looking at that starting lineup, the new face, besides, of course, the 2 transfers who we kind of figured would be in that starting lineup, Jason Green getting the start there. Not his best performance, but how do you think Jason can fit into that starting role?
Yeah, and he was coming off some time off. He tweaked his knee, didn't play against Iowa State, so that was his first time back out there, first action. So understandable, maybe not the sharpest he's been, but I think what we saw is the versatility. He played some 3, he played 4, he played some 5. They really experimented with their lineups a lot, and that's something that he gives you that maybe you don't get from the others is the length, the athleticism, the ability to rebound, which we didn't necessarily see in this one, but we've seen it in the past. He allows you to kind of play around with some lineups where you can put Mason Miller out there at the 3 with Jason at the 4, and then kind of mix and match defensively and just have Jason take whatever the tougher assignment is there. You can slide down to Jason in some small ball 5, depending on the matchups as well, to allow you to get some of the other, because they've got a Gillette at the 4 spot with Miller, with Isaac Trout, with Green, and Jackson McAndrew. All those guys can play, and you can't play 4 guys at one position. So you got to start messing around with your lineups to try to create some openings there to get those guys out there. And Jason's versatility, I think, will be a big part of that.
Well, Pop Isaac sure made a statement in his Creighton debut. 24 points, 6 assists, and not a guy that typically shoots from 3, but he's 4 for 6 from 3 during this scrimmage. What'd you think of that?
So yeah, if you go back, go to the Bluejay breakdown page at hurrdatsports.com. I did an in-depth film study on Isaac's time at Texas Tech and looking at, all right, what did Creighton see in him? How is he going to fit in this system? And what we saw on Saturday was basically the extreme positive end of what I thought it could be. Because you go back at his freshman year, he was a really, really good 3-point shooter. Deep range, ability to hit off the dribble, off the catch. Last year, he played hurt the entire year, and it impacted every part of his game, including his shooting. So he's a career 32% 3-point shooter. That's not what he was. He was 38% as a freshman, starting for the first time in the Big 12. So I think that's much more what his natural ability is. And within Creighton's system, he's going to get much better looks than he got at Texas Tech as well. And that was kind of the whole conversation when Greg McDermott went out and recruited him. It's like, hey, you come here, you play in the system. You don't have to force as much as you did previously. We're going to get you really good looks as long as you trust the system. And what we saw in this game was him trusting the system. Knocked down his first 4 threes, playing off Kalkbrenner, playing off Stephen Ashworth. And in the second half, started to take over a little bit more on the ball, getting in the paint, throwing up some floaters, some layups, setting up other guys. He got Kalkbrenner dunk. He got Isaac Trout to dunk. So I think the way that it looked between Ashworth and Isaacs offensively, Ashworth had 16 to go with Pop's 24. They were both 4-6 from 3, 14 assists between the 2 of them. That's I think what Greg McDermott envisioned when he went out and recruited Isaacs to play in this system. So as long as he continues to make good decisions and trust the system, I think we're going to see the best year of his career thus far by far.
What did you think of Jemiah Neal in his debut?
He was interesting. Didn't have a big statistical game, but in the first half in particular, I thought he was really good. He late in clock situations and running kind of the second unit, the ball in his hands. He went out and made some stuff happen off the bounce, getting in the paint, setting guys up. I think he had 4 assists without even taking a shot in the first half. And second half, he took a couple of shots, didn't get either of them to go, but I thought he was patient, letting the game come to him and then making plays when he needed to. And then you could see the athleticism pop on the rebounds. And that's where they're going to need him big time this year. Losing Baylor Shireman, Trey Alexander was a good rebounder in the backcourt as well. And Neal, he's going to have to go out and grab some of those rebounds that maybe Jason Green will obviously play a role in that as well, because Kalkbrenner, Greg McDermott talked about how much he is focused on trying to be able to go get a few more of those. But at the same time, like when you're forcing him to come over and help, it's very difficult to go force a miss and go get the rebound yourself as a help side defender there, unless it comes right back to you. So you're going to need everybody else kind of pitching in on that. And Neal showed the ability to do that for sure.
When you think about the rotation, what are the biggest question marks there? I'm sure this keeps Coach Mack up at night.
Yeah, that's exactly what that staff has to figure out over this next week. He played 8, 9, 10 guys before the second media timeout. Played a bunch of guys in the first half. Everybody got out there and scored. So we know Ashworth, Isaacs, Kalkbrenner, heavy minutes.
Yep.
Neal's going to play an important role on the wing. Green will play. I don't know what the minutes are going to be, because as you kind of figure out some of those other guys, but Green's going to slide in there at the starting 4 spot. And then beyond that, I think everything's on the table.
Yeah.
Fedor Zugic's eligibility is the extreme wild card here. You plug him in the lineup, that changes everything and kind of allows things to settle in where they are, because that gives you the kind of extra perimeter player, a little bit more size on the wing that you maybe don't necessarily have right now. But they got to figure out, I think what we saw, Isaac Trout, really good offseason, got out there, looked quicker off his feet. Obviously that dunk was really nice, out there hunting his shot. And Jackson McAndrew, he looks like he's too good not to play right away. So yeah, he came out there and no hesitation, knocked down a few threes. Was active on the glass too. Like that was a big part for him, is when had a tip in there, had 4 or 5 rebounds overall. So they got to figure out how to kind of incorporate him in the lineup while still getting Jason and Isaac their minutes. And then Mason Miller, I think he's never played a 3.
You still have Mason Miller.
He played all his minutes at the 3, which he's never done before previously. I think they've been trying to get him to the point where he could do that for the lineup and for the sake of this roster and getting everybody playing time. I think that's still a work in progress, but that's probably how it's going to have to be, especially until Zugic is cleared. Somebody's got to play the backup 3, and you don't really have anybody to fill that spot. So I think there are a lot of question marks there. I think so. We heard Larry Johnson, freshman guard, dealing with a little bit of a knee issue, probably going to redshirt this year. After that, it's still kind of up in the air. I think we saw McAndrew's probably too good to redshirt. Highest rated recruit since the recruiting website started for Creighton. So you don't expect that guy to redshirt, but with the depth at the position, you're like, could he use a year of strength and conditioning? Went out there and showed like, no, he can help us right now, probably. And then Ty Davis is kind of the other question mark. They don't necessarily have a natural backup point guard right now. They've got Isaacs and Ashworth will probably split and will stagger and play most of those minutes when the game is in doubt. But do you want another ball handler coming off the bench, a traditional point guard type? Or would he be better off redshirting this year, saving that year of eligibility, learning from those guys so they can step in next year? And could you get by with Sterling Knox or Shane Thomas, who we saw come in at the end for a defensive possession of the first half? Get out there. You got to dunk there in garbage time. So you've got some options there. You could fill some spot minutes in the backcourt with those guys that are redshirt freshmen. Or do you want the ball handling, the passing, kind of the more traditional point guard style of Davis? So I think those are kind of some of the outstanding questions for Greg McDermott as we get ready to head into this season.
It sounds weird to say, but do you think this team has more offensive potential than last year with Baylor and Trey?
Yeah, it's hard to say more. I think what might help is I think they will have more depth. And so that will put less pressure on. I think we'll see Isaacs, Ashworth, and Kalkbrenner far and away the offensive leaders. Those guys will be leading them in points almost every single game. Those 3 combined for 58 points on a 90 true shooting percentage in this game. Pretty good. You're going to rely on those guys heavily, but they've got more guys that can step in and fill in the gaps, can space the floor, can get those guys some rest so you don't have to play 38 minutes a game with those starters.
Yeah, I mean, last year, their starters were playing the entire game, 40 minutes plus.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trey was at like 37, Baylor 36, Kalk 35.
And overtime in a ton of those games, too.
So I think those guys will still have to go out and prove it, but Isaac Trout, another year older. Jason Green, another year older. We know how talented McAndrew is.
Sterling Knox, I think, could be a potential impact player as well.
Yeah, just throw him out there. It can kind of be a utility guy for them to eat up some minutes if you need him to on the perimeter. So, and Jemiah Neal's a guy that's played heavy minutes at Arizona State. So you've got more guys that can contribute, I think. I don't know that there's anybody as talented as Baylor and Trey on this team in terms of the perimeter individual
100%.
players, but
By committee,
I think,
maybe.
yeah, just kind of the growth with the way these guys look to be incorporating early with the newcomers. I think this has a chance to be another elite offense for Creighton.
All right, when you look at their non-conference schedule for the Blue Jays, what are some things that you need to see improve, or what are you going to look to in those matchups to make sure that the team's on the right track?
Yeah, it really is just about that rotation and guys settling in and figuring out, all right, where can we play to help this team most? I think they don't have I think Purdue's the toughest game they'll play until they see Nebraska in late November. So the first 4 games, you got UTRGV, Fairleigh Dickinson, Houston Christian, and Kansas City. Got a chance to kind of figure some things out there before you play Nebraska and then head off to the Players Era Festival. That's when things get real. So yeah, the first few weeks of the season entirely about hammering down rotations, figuring out who's ready to contribute, and then to making sure that the newcomers continue to trust to if things go maybe they don't have a great game, do they stick with it, trust the system, because it's easy to play the right way when things are rolling and everything's coming easy to you. Can you stick with it when you face a little bit of adversity? So we'll see kind of how Isaacs in particular continues to fit in. What role does Neal play? Is he a 30-plus minute a game guy? Is he a 20-minute a game guy? So still some questions answered, and I think that's what the first couple of weeks of the season will allow them to do.
All right, well, let's flip over to the women's basketball side. We have not seen them in a public exhibition yet. That'll be on Wednesday tomorrow. But we know that they won their close scrimmage against Kansas by 11 points. Do you have any more intel on that and how that went?
Yeah, it sounds like Keanu Lockett had a great game for them. I believe scored 17. There's a stretch from what I heard, scored 10 of Creighton's 12 points to stretch a 1-point lead out to 13 and kind of put the game on ice there. And then both teams kind of put their reserves in to play a little bit at the end there. But just great for her. She's dealt with so many injuries throughout her career early on. To see her healthy going into the season and having a performance like that, just in terms of her confidence and Creighton's confidence in having her a key part of this rotation is big, because obviously the question is replacing Emma Ronsiek.
Right. And
that's not something you can do with one person. Everybody's going to have to step up their production just a little bit. And if Lockett can be a spark off the bench for them, a consistent producer, that would go a long way towards helping this team maintain their level from the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think what Jim Flannery tried to do in replacing Emma would be Brooke Littrell, 6'2" guard, and she was an All-American at Central Missouri. She shot 47.6% from the field, just 30% from 3, and that's kind of where you can't replace Emma Ronsiek, was her ability to also shoot the 3 ball and get inside, rebound, everything. But I think Brooke can also fill a big void in that, and what I think Jim loves about her most is just her experience.
Yeah, and so you don't necessarily know how exactly that's going to translate from D2 to D1, playing in the Big East. You get out there against UConn, it's a little bit different than anything she's seen to this point in her career.
Yeah.
But in terms of skill set and player type, 6'2", kind of versatile, guard forward hybrid, kind of fits right into that Emma Ronsiek style of play. And I think that's what Jim Flannery saw with her. So now it's a matter of, all right, you've got the skills that fit this system. How well can you produce at this high major level? Because it's quite a step up. But she's got some pretty good players around her to kind of help ease that. They're not going to ask her to come in and replace the Ronsiek role entirely, but she will contribute to fill in that gap for sure.
Yeah, what's so unique about this Creighton team is that there really isn't any turnover throughout the years, right? So you have Mallory Brigg, Morgan Molly, Lauren Jensen, Molly Mogensen, and then Brooke again will most likely be the starting 5 for that team. But you think about that experience, and that was pretty much a sentiment of every interview I did with the players on media day, was just how comfortable this team is with each other. But that also poses a challenge in practice, because you can be so comfortable with people, but are you still going to push each other, right? Like, how do you not settle for anything in practice? How do you keep being competitive with that same group you've been with the past 4 years?
Yeah, and practicing against the same people over and over again, it probably gets a little repetitive, but that's where I think adding in the freshmen to that mix who want to prove themselves, to get out there and show that they can play at this level, that they can be part of this rotation. I think that will help a lot. You've got Elizabeth Gentry, 6'3" center coming in, which you don't necessarily see Creighton recruit a lot of true posts.
No.
So she's a little bit different there, adds a different dynamic there. And Allison Heathcock, 6'1", kind of wing guard forward type there. So those are the two freshmen coming in. You've got Sydney Galladay, another D2 transfer coming in here, just add experience in the backcourt. So you've got some newcomers coming in that are still learning and trying to figure things out. And I think that will help kind of keep practices fresh.
Mm-hmm. And I think every player truly does know their role. Like Mallory Brick, she's not going to try to shoot 3 threes a game. She knows her role. She rebounds. She's a great defensive player, but she can also produce, once in a while for this team. You got Morgan Molly. I want to see her production up even more from last year. I think Jensen can get back on her role, especially with her 3-point game. Molly Mogensen has always been a very sound, calm voice, and I think in those huddles, and I mean their veteran leadership is just off the charts, but they haven't gotten past the second round since they went to the Elite Eight 2 years ago, right? So they lost in that first round, or that was 3 years ago. 2 years ago they lose in the first round. Last year they almost beat UCLA and move over to that Sweet 16, but they lose in the second round. Do you think this team just has all the pieces together to make a deeper run?
That's the question, and we'll have to see. They've got their exhibition. It's against a D2 team, so we're not going to learn the answer to that in that. Yeah. But at least get our first look at the team. The question, can everybody elevate their game? So you talk about Morgan Molly. I think this year for her, they can't afford her to be as streaky as she has been. They need her consistent production. They need her night in, night out to go out there and give them what she's capable of. Because in the past, where you've got Lauren and Morgan and Emma, 2 of the 3 are going to be on most games. Right. And
15 plus points.
Exactly. So you don't necessarily need Morgan scoring 20 every single night for them to go out and win, because you had 3 of them that are capable of doing that in any given game. Now it's just Morgan and Lauren in those roles. Because again, you're not going to ask Jamie Horan to come out and score 12 points a game to replace what you lost with Emma, or Brooke Luttrell coming in here, score 15 points a game. It's going to be a little bit from everybody. You're going to ask Molly to maybe 1 to 2 more buckets a game. You're going to ask Mallory just 1 more bucket a game. Just like you said, she's shown she's capable of taking advantage of the defensive attention paid to their stars and fill in the cracks here. Maybe 1 more bucket a game from her. It's going to be kind of that where everybody across the board needs to step up their game just a little bit in order to make up for what they lost with Emma leaving the program. So that's the question. Is are they capable of doing that? What has the offseason looked like? Have any of these players leveled up, or are they kind of going to be more of what we've seen so far in this career?
And I love how transparent Jim Flannery was in our interview, and that's on YouTube if you guys want to check it out, under Bluejay Breakdown as well. But he basically said, hey, we're trying to fill the gap between us and UConn. And that's the no-brainer every year. You know that UConn has everyone's number in the Big East. It's no secret that they're the best team in that conference, and they carry that conference when it comes to success in basketball in the grand scheme of things. How can Creighton fill that gap between both of those programs? Because I don't think they're too far off.
It's going to come down to the skill level, because you're not going to be able to match what UConn can do from a physical standpoint. It's just got to be IQ. It's got to be confidence. It's got to be skill level. And we've seen them go out there in some of those matchups, and where it just UConn gets on them early and they lose confidence and they're throwing the ball away and they're throwing up bricks. And but then we've also seen a couple of times where they've really pushed them. And so that's where it's got to be. You've got to build up the confidence to where, maybe things go wrong. You can weather that storm. You can go make a play to get yourself back into it and kind of hang with them there. The one thing about Jim Flannery is he's going to put together a non-conference that challenges his team. And right off the bat, you're going on the road to South Dakota State, who went 27-6 last year.
Undefeated in the Summit League.
Home opener against Drake, 29-6 last year. Then you're going to Kansas State. Then you're hosting Nebraska. That's your first 4 games of the season. So there's no time to ease into things. Like, they're going to have to know everybody's roles. They're going to have everybody ready to roll from the opening tip. So I think that'll go a long way towards, he's going to challenge these. He's going to make them face adversity right off the bat so they can learn and grow from it.
And I think that's important too, because if you listen to our Nebraska women's basketball episode, the Huskers don't have to stack their non-con as much as Creighton does because they want those resume builders because the Big East isn't as strong from top to bottom. I think it'll be better this year, and I think there'll be a little bit less disparity between teams, but still, that's why he has to challenge those teams. So these are all trap games for Creighton. Like, if they lose them, it doesn't look good, but if they win them, I mean, it's not going to tell the committee, okay, you beat South Dakota State and Drake, you were supposed to do that. Yeah. Great, congrats. But they're all trap games, in my opinion, and these are must-wins for the Blue Jays.
Nope, without a doubt. That's Creighton's got to build that resume out, and because, like you said, once you get into the Big East, good conference is not necessarily. You've got UConn way at the top, and it's going to be hard to get those wins. And then after that, I think there's some programs still you have some questions about. So, yeah, anything they can do in the non-conference will go a long way towards helping them get to the seed that they need in order to make a deep run and get back to the Elite Eight and potentially beyond.
Yeah, and again, going back to that interview with Coach Flan, his biggest thing was, hey, we want to host this year.
Yeah, that's huge.
And to be that, I mean, you have to be top 16 when it comes to those standings at the end of the year for the bracket?
I forget right now what the format is for that.
You got to be good.
Yeah.
You got to be in that.
Yeah.
You have to be in those situations. There's also other factors into it, obviously, with who can host and who can't. Yeah. But I think that's their biggest goal this year is, hey, let's host the NCAA tournament. And to do that, where do you feel like that success needs to come from most? Like, who are you looking at on this team?
Yeah. Again, it's got to start with their leaders.
Yeah.
They've got to be consistent. That's the biggest thing for Lauren and Morgan is we know when at their best how good they're capable of being. Now it's just got to be night in and night out. It's those two. This program is on their shoulders. They've got to go out and be those stars every single night. Because again, right off the bat, there's no easy games and to start off their non-conference. So that's what's like. In order to host, you're gonna have to go win basically all those games. You can't afford many losses. Yeah, Nebraska, that'll be kind of a toss-up game, both top 25 to start the season. And then beyond those, like you said, those South Dakota State, Drake, those are games that they're gonna look nice on the resume if they go on to have the seasons that you think they're capable of. But you lose to them, it's not gonna look great. So it's those are games that you have to go out there and take care of business in for sure.
And of course, those are all like one bid leagues, right? That they're in. So they want those non-conference wins, especially to add to the resume of Creighton. Like that would look great for them too. So they're going to get their all with all these non-conference opponents. Anything else that stood out to you based on media day and what you heard from the scrimmages? Anything else that Blue Jay fans need to know?
Not really. I'm just looking forward to seeing them in action here against Southwest Minnesota State, and then we'll have kind of a week or so to kind of tune things up for that opener at South Dakota State.
Yeah. Well, we can't wait to watch that one tomorrow. Jacob Padilla, I'm Anna Bellinghausen, and we'll talk to you next week on Bluejay Breakdown.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.